Welcome back to Wooden Sticks. I'm the host, Kevin Gorg, where we always try to schedule wonderful guests and have fun hockey conversation here, even in the summertime. Hockey season never slows down. The Stanley Cup in full swing right now with, as we record this, middle of the week, Florida Panthers have a commanding 2-0 lead on the Edmonton Oilers. And still here in Minnesota, we're celebrating the Walter Cup Championship on the women's side for Minnesota in the PWHL. And today's guest, front and center, the first pick in the draft last year for Minnesota was Taylor Heise, former Patty Kazmaier award winner, which is the Hobie Baker in women's college hockey. Also a Ms. Hockey winner from Red Wing back in the day, grew up in Lake City, Minnesota with a population of around 5,000. So Taylor's a remarkable hockey player, and her story is going to be a fun one to kind of go behind the curtain on a little bit here today. And we know the details. We know what a superstar she is on the ice, but I can't wait to find out how she came to the game, and in a small place like Lake City, how she ended up being such an unbelievable superstar in the women's game. Had a great career at Minnesota, played during that COVID era, started back in 2018. So she actually had 5 years with Brad Frost and the Golden Gophers. Can't wait to hear some of those fun stories. And then obviously get into the incredible run this year for Minnesota in the inaugural season of the PWHL. They had some ups and downs. They had a great regular season for the most part until the tail end, and they hit the skids and barely got in the playoffs, got down right away 2-0 to Toronto in that first round series, and then came back to beat Toronto, who had handpicked them to be their opponent in the playoffs. That's a whole nother layer there that we're going to get into. And then finally get to the finals against Boston, and they thought they won the game, and Taylor was involved in that goal, a goal that was waved off after the celebration, and the helmets and the gloves and the sticks fly everywhere. She was the one that kind of slid into the Boston goaltender right before that puck went in. So the emotion involved with thinking you've won a championship, seeing Boston minutes later after the goal is overturned, win that game and force a Game 5 back in Boston. So the emotion of that and the pressure that builds, and they certainly found a way to overcome all that adversity and win that championship. So Taylor's going to be a great guest, and I've had enough exposure to her around the rink and seen her in the Twin Cities here now for many, many years, and how well-spoken she is, what a great ambassador she is for the game of hockey. And I just can't wait to find out, the details of her story. I know all the big moments in time, and I've just talked about a handful of those, but I think there's so much more there. And then to be the first ever player drafted in this professional league, and then to be a part of the draft a couple nights ago. Our most recent guest on the show, Alexis Pearson, was the host last Monday, so a couple nights ago, in downtown St. Paul for the second ever draft for the PWHL, and Taylor was there, so she can give us a little scoop from the draft and maybe some of the young players that the Minnesota club's going to pick. And then we could talk a little nickname. I'm on record here on Wooden Sticks with Purple Rain as my top pick for the team name for our club here locally. I know in August we'll get an answer, but with the Prince tie-in and all kinds of different layers there and the great purple sweaters that the team wears, I think it might be kind of fun. So we'll see if it ends up being something that Taylor signs off on, and really just continue the hockey conversation. Maybe we'll get her thoughts on the Stanley Cup, and a guy like Connor McDavid, who if you're a hockey player, boy or girl, old, young, doesn't matter. He's the best player in the game right now, and he's arguably one of the greatest to ever play the game of hockey. And so for someone like Taylor, who's been a top-end, high-end offensive weapon on every team she's played on, I'll be very curious to see how much she watches Connor McDavid, how much she admires Connor McDavid, and like me, just I think how much the game is enhanced when you see a player that has that skill set. I love watching him play, and I've been lucky enough to travel with the Wild now and to see him up close and personal. I've been to morning skates and watched the details that he brings to the rink every day, even on a game day practice, how much he works on his craft. And for me, and Mike Modano and I had this conversation about a month ago, he's as fast a player as I've seen in the game today when he gets the puck. I think all players have speed, right? If you're a top-end player like McDavid, playing on the first line of a a cup contender like the Oilers, you're going to play the game with speed. But a lot of times when the puck gets up on your stick, the game slows down, specifically with a player with the puck. But it is not the case with McDavid. He actually seems to be faster with the puck. Mike Modano had that skill set as well. So I'll be very curious to see what Taylor has to say on that. And then just to, find out where this league is headed. I think, year one, we're all very excited about the attendance records and the following that the PWHL has created. And, I think Taylor's still old enough to know that this wasn't always the case, that we always didn't have such a wonderful landing place for girls hockey and a place for youngsters to kind of idolize and look up to and aim like we've had forever on the boys' side. And so for a high school hockey player at Red Wing back, talking 2013, 14, that area, maybe what her thoughts were at the time and maybe how that maybe has changed for high school players now that they have such a lofty goal, such a wonderful place if they're a superstar player to end up at one point, and then to have a league where everybody's focused on one league. We're not watering things down, playing in multiple leagues, and her thoughts and all that. So there's a lot of layers to the conversation today, and it's going to be fun to connect with Taylor Heise. A lot of fun this summer here on the show. I'd love you to ping me on social media. If you want to get me on X, formerly known as Twitter, it's at Gorgamatic21. And if you've got a request for a guest, someone you think would be great to connect with, we try to look for players, men and women, that have a tie to Minnesota hockey. They can be current players. They can be former players, coaches, managers. Ping me at Gorgamatic21 on X, and I'll try to get to as many of those as possible and find a way to get some of those guests lined up here this summer. And can't wait to kind of continue these hockey chats into the tail end of summer to the fall when we get ramped up for all the seasons that will begin once again. So we're looking forward to that, and Taylor Heise here in a few minutes on the show. But first of all, I want to thank our sponsors. And again, you can get involved if you contact Karen Cleary. She is the hook that you need for yourself, or maybe it's a family member or friend that needs some more exposure to their business. Cleary at talknorth.com. I want to start by thanking my friends at Bay to Bay Boat Club. It is summer now. It's going to be in the upper 80s all week. It's going to be awesome to be out on the water, and you can do that. It's the country club boating experience you've always wanted without all the work that goes into it. Memberships are still available all the way through the summer here. Call them at 952-401-3880 or head to baytobayboatclub.com and get out on that water and enjoy the best of Minnesota summers over here in Minnetonka. And folks, you all know about our connection with the Freemasons. You think of the secret handshakes or the unusual hats and those fun pancake breakfasts. But Minnesota Masonic Charities would prefer that you think about the work that they do here in our community. Places like the Masonic Cancer Center at the U of M, or the Masonic Children's Hospital, and of course the Masonic Home over in Bloomington. They're just a few examples of the important work that Freemasons support in Minnesota. As part of the largest fraternal organization in the world, Masons have constantly and consistently answered the call when it comes to charitable needs. So happy that Minnesota Masonic Charities has chosen Wooden Sticks as a platform to spread their great word, and can't wait to hear all the great activities they have coming up here later in the summer and into the fall. As I mentioned at the top of the show, here on Wooden Sticks today, a champion, a leader, a superstar, homegrown right here from Lake City, Minnesota, through Red Wing, up to the U of M, and now in St. Paul, starring for the Minnesota team in the PWHL. After this quick break, we get to Taylor Heise here today on Wooden Sticks. All right, we're back on Wooden Sticks, and as I mentioned at the top of the show, super excited to talk to this young lady today. Fresh off that championship with the Team Minnesota club in PWHL, she is Taylor Heise. Taylor, thank you for being a part of this today.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited.
Well, it's been a whirlwind, and I got to tell you, I was at Game 3 on that Friday night in that championship series, and I was walking into the building not knowing what to expect. About 5 minutes in front of puck drop, the Timberwolves were having that incredible run through the playoffs. They had a home game. It was a beautiful summer night. The Twins were at home at their ballpark. And I really was overwhelmed by the amount of people and the atmosphere in that building. I just think year number one, not knowing what we were getting into, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 months ago, what's it feel like to be a part of such an incredible experience for not just your team, but for this league?
Yeah, I think overwhelming is definitely the right word that describes it. I think that game was also up in the air for us. Like, as players, we know we want to play hockey, and we're going to play hockey whether there's 5 people in the stands or 500 or 5,000. So for us, we think about it before games. Well, sometimes as a team, guess how many people we think are going to be there. And with the Timberwolves on such a hot run, obviously I'm a big Timberwolves fan too. Obviously you got to pick and choose. But I think for our fan base and for this state of hockey, we never really have to have a worry that we're not going to have people in the stands. And for all of the playoff games that we had, even considering that we went 0-2 in some of them and 0-1 to start, and then we had a 6-game losing streak right before playoffs, our fans were insane. And to be a part of such an unreal organization, as well as, being a part of such an unreal team and group, we ended up coming together at the right time. And honestly, I think that's what hockey's about. When we lost 6 games in a row, 5 or 6, however many it was, it's actually really hard to do that in hockey. When you bet on a team, I think that's actually very talented. Losing 5 games in a row is really hard. So for us, when we did that, I think we learned a lot from it. And I honestly think that's part of the reason why we ended up winning.
And let's go back to that streak, because I followed your season from afar, but as close as I could. And you guys were one of the best teams in the league throughout most of the regular season. And it was bizarre because in the final couple weeks, you guys either hit the wall or something was lost, right? And you guys couldn't do anything right. And you barely got into the playoffs. At that point, what do you think happened to your club?
Yeah, I think as a league, we knew that when we had our World Championship break, there was going to be some interesting things to come out of it. When you train so hard and you play 2 months in your league and, have overwhelming support and, all of these teams are so good because we only have 6 and there's so much talent and so much depth on both ends of everyone's roster, whether that's first and second line or that's third and fourth line. So I think, when we came out of that break, a lot of people had been playing a lot of games and a lot of people hadn't. So for our squad, I think for us, we just had a really tough time getting our groove back. And when you go down and you lose 2 games in a row, you're like, okay, we can get out of this. You lose 3, you're like, all right, we can work with it. You lose the 4th one with 3 seconds left in the game.
Oof.
And all you needed was a point to get to playoffs. Then your hopes are shot. I think at that point we were mentally not in a good spot, but our coaches and I think our players more so came together and just said, guys, like, we have set ourselves up for success, thank God, at the beginning of the year. But we can do this. We were number 1 for so long, and I truly think we are one of the better teams and one of the best teams. Obviously, we ended up winning, but be one of the best teams all year. And, to look back at the awards that had recently been yesterday and the day before, best forward, best D, best goalie, we didn't have any of those. We were just such a solid group of individuals that came together and, made things work. But yeah, that losing streak was tough. And, we came together, captains came together, players came together, coaches came together, and we're like, guys, we just need 1 point. And we still couldn't do it. We lost 5 or 6 straight. And then thank God Ottawa had, given us a shot in the dark to get into playoffs. And I think sometimes that's when you're the most dangerous, is you've been through all of the shit that is like hit you so hard. And then you get through it and you're like, man, it could not be worse than that. We have been at the bottom of the barrel and we're going to climb out and we're going to make our way to better hockey. And that's exactly what we did.
And I love the format from a fan's perspective, having the top team handpick their opponent, but for a player like yourself and such a freaking competitor, how motivating was it for you and your teammates to know that Toronto said, this is the team that we want to play. This is the team that we believe we can beat?
Yeah. I think for me, like, I wouldn't want to be number 1 because anyone you pick is going to come out and just try to destroy you. But I love the rule. I think the rule brings animosity to the game. It brings a way for fans to have their own little rivalries going, and it just creates it creates havoc. And I think that in sport, there's not a lot of havoc going on. There's a lot of structure. So when havoc comes around, people kind of go nuts. And for us, like, we, as a group, I think you can say, yeah, we did so bad that they had to pick us, but honestly, they didn't. Like, as much as they couldn't pick number 2 Montreal, which they couldn't because of the rule, I would have picked Montreal even over us because we beat them more times than Montreal did. Like, they were like 4-0 against Montreal in the year. And obviously you can't pick them because they were number 2. But I think for me, like you said, I'm a competitor, and it's going to piss me off if you decide that you think you're going to beat my team and my group and all that. But I think we came out, and even after being down 0-2, I told the group, I was like, guys, we're playing with house money now. Like, this is just us playing hockey, and we should just go out and have fun because they got everything to lose and we got nothing to lose. Because people thought we were going to get swept. So if we can take a game here, we can continue playing, and we can continue being a part of this group. And the biggest thing is you're never going to have the same squad year after year. So it's fun to put into perspective to everyone that, like, not everyone's going to be here next year, so we might as well go out with a bang.
You get down 2-0, as you mentioned, just winning a game, getting back home and winning a game to settle things down, and knowing you hadn't won for a while. How much did that galvanize your team psychologically?
Yeah, I think more so we hadn't scored a goal in a long time. And we obviously scored one in Toronto. We finally got the monkey off our back. But I remember at home, I think it was Maggie Flaherty scored, and our bench went nuts. I think we just had, like, tied the game. And that was our first goal, like, in ages, it felt like. So we were going crazy. We're like, guys, we can do this. And then the floodgates opened, and, everything started to go the way that it should have. And I think we just needed a little bit of help from the puck, just going in the back of the net. And it's not to say we weren't doing the right things and making the right plays. It's just a post here, somehow a goalie stopping this one, it hitting someone's skate and going in the net for our team. Like, that was just the luck we had been having. And in sports, it can't last that long as much as people think. Like, crazy things happen often. Like, the game is a game of structure. And like I said, so for us, we just knew we're like, once it happens, the floodgates are going to open and we're going to go crazy. And that's kind of how it ended up being. So it was cool.
Yeah, you guys ride that momentum, come back, beat Toronto in 5 games. And then let's get to the Walter Cup finals, because there's so many different questions I have about the championship series. I mentioned I was at game 3. Game 4 is the game, I think, for everybody in Minnesota. Like, listen, I'm a lot older than you, but to be a Minnesota sports fan, you have to understand that
adds up.
It does. It's decades of heartbreak, and it's the Vikings, it's the North Stars, it's the Twins outside of 87 and 91, and of course it's the Wild, and it's all this baggage we bring to every sporting event. And so you're involved in the play, and I think they got the call right. I'll say that right off the hop, and it was a gutsy call. But all that being said, Taylor, you guys make a play, you kind of lose your edge, you slide kind of into the goaltender, and the puck, bang, bang, it's in the net. And you guys have the helmets off, the sticks, gloves, the whole thing. It's the celebration that you've been waiting for all year long, and it gets taken away. What was that experience like?
It's like getting your heart ripped out of your chest, as dramatic as that sounds. I think that it was poorly. I would agree with you. I think if I'm on the other team, I'm saying that's not a goal. And for me, as a competitor, I'm saying, well, I think if she would have stopped the puck, it wouldn't have had anything to do with me. And that's up for debate. But for me, if I'm in Boston, I'm like, that thing's getting overturned. There's no way. So I think the biggest thing was, I think it was poorly done when we had to pick our gear up. I wasn't even playing with the gloves. I had my teammates' gloves on. Like, we didn't even have time to switch. Thank God we had our right helmets, sticks and everything were crazy. And then you just know in sports, Boston scoring that next goal. Like, as much as you want to think it's you just absolutely got your heart ripped out. We have said now we're the only team to have won the Walter Cup twice, and probably will only have won it twice. And you're just kind of sitting there and you're like, we just worked until 2 overtimes to have 1 goal in this game, and it just got taken back. And I honestly truly think if we would have gone in the locker room, which I don't think it's in the rule book, but if we would have gone in the locker room and you would have taken a little time, they would have zammed and we would have came back, I think we would have won that game. Because I really truly think we were outplaying them the whole game. And we just ended up like having a lapse in judgment, and they ended up scoring. But end of the day, no hard feelings because we ended up winning. So, but would it have been amazing to win it in front of our fans and not have to fly out to Boston one more time? Yes, it would have.
For sure.
But, we won. And at the end of the day, it was a special moment either way. And I think the Boston fans even made us feel very at home in Boston after we won, which was very cool.
Take me through the day in between and maybe the emotion of that, because in the moment, it happens so quick, right? It's a hockey game. It's overtime. There's the ups and the downs. You're devastated. You walk out of that rink. And I think in playoff hockey at any level, when you win, you think you're never going to lose a game ever again. And when you lose, you think you're never going to win ever again. It just, everything gets built up. So the next day, what was that like? And as one of the leaders on this team, what messages were you trying to send to your teammates to let them know that it was going to be okay?
Yeah, it was hard too because we didn't have that much time in between. There was a chance that we were getting on a flight that next day right away, like at 11 a.m. So we didn't even have time. I just knew I had to go home and pack. Our captains did a really good job of just saying, like, it's not over. But we did have a joke beforehand. We're like, we are not going back to Boston. Like, we have been there way too many times this year. None of us want to go back. It's a long flight. We're going to end it at home. And then after, we're like, as much as we joked about that, guys, like, this is a chance to play for a playoff game. It's a chance to play for a championship. And anywhere we're going to do it, we just want to win. So sure, just get yourselves ready. And we outplay them the whole game. If we come out with the same intensity, they're going to have nothing left. And that's at the end of the day what we did. And we ended up really, I think, controlling a lot of the game in game 5 and being able to take all of our lines and everyone that played in that game and just figure out what your role was, and everyone played those roles. I don't think we played our roles that well during this regular season. And a lot of the games that we lost, I think that we just lost where we were at and what we were supposed to do. But in playoffs, our entire team was so locked in on like what your job was. And that's the game, though. You're getting paid to play. And that's kind of the landscape of it all right now.
In the NHL playoffs, and I can't wait to get your opinion on that Stanley Cup final and McDavid and all that good stuff here in a little bit. But they have the Stanley Cup, and the great tradition that I love about that trophy is how each player gets their time with the Stanley Cup. And so I have to ask you, because I don't know the answer, the Walter Cup, do you guys as players each get time in the offseason here with that cup?
I kind of figured this would be a question. And for my thoughts, I think it should be absolutely yes. I don't think that it would be that big of a deal, especially since a lot of us are from Minnesota. But I sadly don't think that that's the case. Really? I know the city would eat it up and I would have the best time and bringing it home to show all the people that have supported me for so long what all that hard work and support led to. But I don't think that that's the case right now. And I don't know if that's going to change maybe middle of summer. But we did a number on the cup with some alcoholic drinks and things. So they have to go send it back to Tiffany to have it be professionally cleaned. So I'm not sure if it's going to come back or what, but that's actually something that I can ask someone who that's above my pay grade, I guess.
Well, you were the playoff MVP. That's extraordinary. And let's go back to September, 7, 8, 9 months ago, and the first draft. I don't know how much you knew going into it. None of us knew where this league was going, but it sure feels like decades down the road, we're going to be looking at the PWHL like we look at the WNBA right now, which is a pretty big deal. Right. So you end up being the first overall pick. Going into the draft, how much did you know about where you were projected to be picked, and what was that experience like being the first overall pick ever in the history of this league?
Yeah, it was a really special moment. And, I have the photos to prove it, and I have them printed, and I make sure that, if I ever feel like I'm getting complacent or, not being grateful for the things that I have, like I always look back at that because it was such a special and surreal moment, especially having Billie Jean King award me the stick and help me to kind of understand all of the things that were at stake, and the fact that my name was called first. I kind of blacked out in the moment, but being able to see the video back, you can just see like how happy I was. And Minnesota is my home, and it's where I wanted to play. But I didn't have any inclination on where I was going to get picked or when. I just knew that I had set myself up for success, and the Minnesota fan base and everyone that has supported me for so long, I knew would support me anywhere. But I think in Minnesota would have been my best bet. And I'm just, like I said, so happy that I ended up here, and I'm honestly living my dream. And this is the place that I want to get old and raise my kids in. So, obviously I wouldn't want to go anywhere else, but the draft was super special, and we just had the second draft 2 days ago, and being a part of that, having quite a lot less nerves than I had the first time. But it was just such a fun experience to be a part of, and to see all my friends who have worked so hard now, and we're able to see how the league has, flourished and grown. now that they get to be a part of it, and like meeting my new teammates was quite the experience. And it's definitely something that we can all say it's been the first of first this year. And I think that one hit hard. Just seeing all the girls and seeing how much fun they had helped me to reminisce on the fact of how much fun I had and how special the experience was.
Okay, I got to put you on the spot with the nickname. I have my choice. I talked about it in the open, which I already taped, so you probably haven't heard it.
Nope.
I would love to hear what if they came to you and said, okay, playoff MVP, first pick overall, what's your nickname for the Team Minnesota here in the P-Dub?
Oh, so in the P-Dub, Grace Zelnick and I have pegged this name for a few months now, and I'm not sure it's going to be what it is, but we want it to be the Purple Rain.
Yes, that's the one I picked.
Yeah, and we wanted to have purple jerseys with a crown in the middle, maybe a little bit of sparkle, slight gold to it. But we've been planning this for a long time, and we've been putting this out to the media to make sure people hear it, because obviously that's above our pay grade yet again. But that's what I would say.
I just had this conversation with Alexis Pearson here on the show last week, and at the end of the show, we bantered back and forth, and I'm basically imploring, like, this needs to be the new name. Like, there are so many fun things we can do with Purple Rain, and being that we've got this young generation of fans, that's the thing that stood out to me in that game 3. How many young boys and girls were in that building? That is going to be the music that goes with it, the logo, like that is the home run of all home runs. So I hope you and I can get this thing done. I will push it all over social media on my side. I'm so glad we're in unison on this. That made my day, Taylor. That's fantastic.
We have we call them the Purple Rain Girls. They came to every game with their Purple Rain sign, and they held it up, and they got put on social media. Our media put it on and everything. I heard that there'll be mascots and names in August, and I haven't seen anyone leak anything about kind of the trademarks that have been looked at. So I'm very intrigued to see what it's going to be.
Oh, that's awesome. All right, let's go back to where it all started. We on Wooden Sticks here, we like to throw it back, right, to old-time hockey. And we can't get too far back with you because you're so young at 24, but it started in Lake City, Minnesota. And I think a lot of people have been through Lake City. It's a beautiful part of the state.
Yes.
As a little youngster, as little baby Taylor, how did hockey become a big deal to you as a youngster?
Yeah, it's definitely a more unique story from someone who comes from a basketball background and a basketball town, which still to this day, I think basketball is definitely the number one sport. I hope Lake City gets a rink one day, and if I can help, make that happen, I definitely will, because I think it gives people an opportunity to choose your own path instead of having it paved for you. So for me, I grew up, both my parents played college basketball. Both my brothers play right now. One of them is going to play at Iowa State, which is huge for him. He just transferred.
Wow.
Yep. And then my youngest, who's 6'9", he is playing at the University of Upper Iowa. He redshirted last year, and now he's going to play this year. So I got a lot of basketball genes in my family. I have 10 to 12 cousins on one side that are guys, and they all played, and most of them did at least. So I was always surrounded by basketball, and I loved it. I really did. But I think I knew that it wasn't going to satisfy or fulfill me. So when I was like quite young, I was about 7 or 8. I got a note in my backpack, second, I think it was first grade, that pretty much asked if I wanted to, go out and try hockey try hockey outside. I think we had to pay a little bit, and we got to go and just try it out in Lake City's outdoor rink, which since it's outdoors, you can only play if it's nice out. And that's kind of what I learned. And my parents threw me out there, and my mom goes, "You really thought you were the best one out there, but you were terrible. And you had pink laces, and you had bad style. You had your hair down," but she goes, "I just let you live your life, and you loved it." And my parents would have to drag me off the ice. Unlike all the other kids who wanted to sit and eat their snacks in the warming hut, I didn't want to go in there. I wanted to play. And after playing a year and a half with my brothers outside, they realized that when they're so tall, it wasn't for them. They knew basketball was for them. So they continued the basketball route. I ended up transferring over to Red Wing to play U8. So just like I was living in Lake City, went to school in Lake City, just played hockey in Red Wing, which is down the river or up the river a little bit. Ended up completing that, but Lake City's always my home, and it's where I started my successes, I would say. And it kind of taught me a lot about the gratefulness of the game and knowing that the game can go away at any point, whether that's from injury, whether that's from weather. Like I said, when I grew up, when I played outside, we only got to play if it was nice. I would pray before I went to bed that there was a nice snowfall, that the parents of the town would come out and shovel it, and that I would be able to play. That was my prayer at night, because I wanted to play so bad. And I knew when it rained, or if I got up and it looked bad outside, I would want to cry, because that meant I couldn't go and skate. And we only skated twice a week. We skate Sundays and Wednesdays against the town Wabasha, which was down the river a little bit.
I know the area well. Which player did you look up to or idolize as a kid? Was it somebody in the NHL? Was it somebody on the women's side at the U of M, or Olympic player? Who did you look up to as a kid?
Yeah, I would say basketball was on our radar and on our TV a lot more than the NHL. I really don't even think we got NHL on my TV and people would actually sit and watch, including my brothers, until I was about 14, when I had kind of made my spiel about how I was good enough to have NHL on the TV. So I think we can watch hockey for a night and we're going to survive. So for me, I really enjoyed watching Mikko Koivu and Zach Parise, two very easy names out of Minnesota, I know, but I think to have the chance to have met both of them and to see that it was accessible and attainable to be a hockey player and love what you do for so long and continue on. I didn't know that was going to happen for me as a female, but I just knew that there was an opportunity for that, whether that be me or my kids or anything like that. So I think for those two, and then for the women's game, I obviously being able to play with Hillary Knight and Kendall Coyne and being able to play against Marie-Philippe Poulin, all those women I watched, but I think the biggest one that I was able to kind of grasp things from was Julie Chu.
Oh, yeah.
She was great, and I think she set the standard for women's hockey players, and I don't think she would tell people that she was the best, but she worked so hard and did so much for women's sport. And I remember when I was 14, I got to go to a camp, and she was my coach, and that was kind of my full circle moment. That I said to myself, like, I'm going to make this game mine, and I'm going to, go as far as I can, whether that's playing in college or that's playing for my national team or professionally. Obviously wasn't a thing yet, but that's kind of how I thought about it. But those are definitely people that I thought about as people that I could look up to and learn a little bit from.
You end up being Miss Hockey at Red Wing, and by that point, everybody knows you can pretty much handpick where you end up playing Division I college hockey. But let's rewind it to whether it was youth hockey or at some point in your high school career playing for Red Wing. When did you realize, Taylor, that you might have the opportunity to play not only college hockey, but play it at the highest level?
Right. Yeah. I would definitely say as a child, I knew I had the drive to, and I knew I had that it factor. But like to not be burnt out and to not, I would say like get sick of it. And for the amount of hours that I put in, I was doing 3-4 hours a day. I loved it. And if, when you're a kid, if your parents tell you to do something, you're not going to do it. I was kind of that kid too. So my parents knew better. They're like, what do you think you want to do today? And I was like, I think I'm going to go stick handle, shoot. And then maybe I'll, run hills with the boys in the back and just have fun and just see where we're at. And I think when I was about 14, I had figured out you can make high performance camps and make your national team program. And that's kind of when I figured like, I'm going to do this. And I think like, I obviously knew I was good enough at 14, but I was like, I'm going to put in the time and effort to make sure that I set myself up for success and that I can play college hockey. So that was obviously my goal. And I think at like 13 or 14, that kind of became realistic for me, to kind of like be able to tell myself like, that's attainable. So I think back to then and think about like how much more there is now that I'm so excited about, like playing professionally and also just like being a part of such a crazy and important league that's going to, create time and so much just energy and juice for so many people and so many opportunities in the time forward.
So you end up playing at the U of M for the Golden Gophers. How easy or how hard was it to end up playing for your hometown team? For some people, they talk when they're younger how far they want to get away. Like 2 of my 3 daughters are like, oh, I want to go here, I want to go there. But some people really just want to stick right here and play for the hometown team. For you, did you have to wrestle with that? What type of decision was it?
Yeah, I think a lot of my friends who ended up, being my best friends at the University of Minnesota, didn't have to think twice about what they wanted to do. I've never been one to follow the pack. I'm never one to just go along with something because I think that other people will like it. I'm very my own person and I run my own path. I've always been one person to kind of take the road less traveled and do the weird things that people don't want to do or the things that are hard. So, I went on a lot of different visits. I visited almost every school in the WCHA. I knew that at that point I was a homebody and I wanted to stay in a realm where my parents and grandparents can watch me.
Yep.
My grandpa begged me. I remember he was like, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but he goes, before I want to watch you play 4 years of college before I die. And I want to be able to have it be accessible. And not only did I obviously love the Gophers and I loved a lot of the WCHA schools too. I just think with having Joel Johnson as my national team coach for the U18 national team for a few years, I had him for a year before I committed. I got to work with him and everything because I'm not someone to do something on a whim. So when I was able to decide what I wanted, I knew that he set such a good culture, and Brad Frost and everyone at the U as well. I just knew Joel at the time very well. And I knew that was the place for me. They were respectful. Hockey was something you did. It's not who you are. And I think that that's a huge part of things that I think kids can get lost in. The accolades and all that are all cool, but when you go home, can you still love what you do if you came home and you broke your leg and you couldn't play hockey anymore? And my parents made that very clear to me. They're like, if you go to school and the first thing you do is you trip or something and you tear or break something and you can't play, are you still going to want to go there? And I would have said yes. And I to this day think the University of Minnesota was an amazing experience, and I wouldn't have given up my 5 years for the world. So I think I was a little bit different than most people, and I looked a lot of different places, but ended up settling in my home city, I would say. And it wasn't hard. I don't feel like I had a lot of pressure. I felt like I just had a lot of opportunity to grow. And I really, truly think the University of Minnesota and the Gopher program helped me to do that.
That's fabulous. And I've known Brad Frost and that coaching staff for
Yep.
many, many years, going back to when I was the St. Thomas women's coach for a decade. And just
Right.
first-class operation, good human beings, run the program the right way. And it seems like you guys, for sure, because of the success the program has had, play with a target on your back. But I have to think, Taylor, that helped you guys elevate your game, because no matter who Minnesota was playing when you were there, you were going to get the opposition's very best game.
Exactly right. We got everyone's best game all the time. And sometimes as a player, you want to have that poor me attitude and say, oh, they just crapped the bed against so-and-so 3 games in a row, but they're going to come to us and they're going to try to, obviously do their best. It happened all the time to us. Like, we would be playing a team who has been doing terrible for a whole week or 2 weeks in a row. And then they'll come and they'll give us their absolute best game because they want to beat us. And a lot of that stemmed from the fact that a lot of Minnesota-born players weren't able to play for the Gophers. You have to be the best of the best to play for us. And, and sometimes things don't work out. So every other Minnesota-born player that wasn't on our team would just want to just prove that they should have been on that team, that they worked hard enough, that they're good enough. So we always got everyone's best game. But for me, I always knew that I was going to be good enough to help our team win almost every game if everyone else could come out and give their best. But I was blessed to have so many amazing players surrounding me and people that I was able to learn from. Coaching staffs that believed in us. Obviously never got a ring, never won a national title, but got really close. And honestly, the teams that win the national titles, they're not going to tell you that the score was 3-2 in the national title game against so-and-so. They're going to tell you about what they did afterwards, what their team did on the bus rides. Like,
yes,
all those fun little cliches that even as a competitor for me, I could probably tell you what the score was when we played Wisconsin 3 years ago on October 7th, but I'm still able to recollect more about the times that we had and the fun times that I was able to learn more about myself and kind of dig deeper into how like mental health and how your mental well-being comes into play when it comes to being a competitor and being an athlete, and kind of giving yourself some grace that, as much as you want to be your best all the time, that's just simply not how it works. And taking care of yourself and your mental health and the people around you and surrounding yourself with the right people, that honestly means a lot too.
You end up playing 5 years there because of COVID-19. I have to ask you, that dynamic, the pandemic kind of sandwiched right in the middle of your time with the Golden Gophers. For you as a hockey player, for you as a student, and for just you as a human being,
Yep.
How did that time impact your tenure with the University of Minnesota?
Yeah, I think it affected me in a lot of different ways. I feel terrible for the women that weren't able to finish their college careers, because of the pandemic and to not have that year given back to them right away, and then kind of moving on from hockey. That obviously is a tough way to go about things. But, for me, I think I learned that hockey can be taken away. Like, seriously, no rinks, nothing was open, couldn't skate for 4 or 5 months, which for me, I barely take a week off. So that was really hard for me, but I found ways to kind of better myself. I met with a sports psychologist. I put my rollerblades on just like I did when I was a child, and I stick handled outside. And I, ran hills with my brothers. I, shot pucks in my garage. And then I just was able to watch more of the game, watch past NHL games, watch my past games. And just seeing that hockey can be done. And for me, it was a really hard reality of what would I do if that were the case? And I really think it helped me to think about it and to find my passions in life and to dig deeper into my educational passions and just seeing what I would potentially do. But to have that 5th year with my best friends, which sometimes it's hard. I get it. You're 24 or 23 with 18-year-olds on your team. And it's kind of hard to find that middle ground. But I think my class and my grade did a really great job of trying to bridge that gap and make sure everyone felt loved and supported. But to have another year in college, I think anyone would want that, whether or not you're an athlete or not. So I feel super blessed to have spent an extra year at the University of Minnesota and just to have all my, hockey, I would say friendships as well as friendships outside of hockey just flourish in that amount of time too. Cause you're growing up, and to finally be in college and for me to realize how special an extra year is, I think I'm glad that I was old enough and wise enough to figure that out.
It's funny, though, you mentioned the greatest silver lining of all, and the pandemic sucked, and so many people were affected with their health and their families and all that tragedy. But aside from that, appreciating what you have when sports was shut down, my whole life, whether it's broadcasting the Wild in the winter or working out at Canterbury Park in the summer, it was gone. And you learn this can be taken away, and this is something you cherish, just like you being a hockey player. And then when you come back, how much more you appreciate just having that. And now as I look back, I enjoy everything I do in my career and in my daily activities so much more, even going to the movie theater, which I do 2 or 3 times a week because I'm a movieaholic, but that again was taken away. So here we are. The Walter Cup has been decided, the playoff MVP, the new draft, all that good stuff. Have you had any time to dive into the NHL playoffs? Have you watched some of the playoffs and or the Stanley Cup finals, or have you been too locked in on what you're doing with your team?
Yeah, I think after our days of partying and having a good time when we got back, I've definitely been able to tune in a little bit. I went to Florida for a little bit with my mom, but me and my family love watching the NHL playoffs. My dad will send me, every nasty thing that McDavid's ever done is in me and his text string. My boyfriend and I will watch it when he's a basketball fiend. So when the NBA finals are not on, we do a little bit of both. We watch a little bit of both, but I'm a huge fan of McDavid, and, I love Matthew Tkachuk too. So going between the two and watching playoff hockey and truly being able to say that I've done it and I've played it and been in series of best of 5, best of whatever, best of 7, whatever it is, how different the game is and how much big players step up in big moments. For me, being able to see my favorite players, Austin Matthews, Connor McDavid, literally anyone, David Pastrnak, all these people who have stepped up and done what they need to do, but then only certain ones of them succeed. So I've learned so much from watching the playoffs, and it's been so cool to see which teams, stand out, which teams have, the playoff not luck is what I call it. You think you have the playoff luck, but then again, you don't. So it's been awesome to see. And playoff hockey is one of a kind for sure.
And I love watching McDavid. I think as a sports fan, I always migrate to the very best players, and I'm in awe of what they can do. And I just think, Taylor, watching what he can do with the puck, how he can actually speed up his skating when he controls the puck and still make these incredible plays. We don't get to see him enough because of where he plays, but I love that he's on this stage right now.
I would agree. He's a special player in the sense that he can make things work out of nothing. I call him the magician. I've always called him that. I think it's a very fair way to put what he does, but it's not magic because he's worked so hard for it. And he's done so much work and all the behind the scenes things. But for him, he can create space for himself and for his teammates through a small move. His deception skills are insane. And you can just tell when he comes up the ice, people freak out, and he will tell if you're a defender and he's coming up the ice on you and he makes a move to the inside and he sees you cross, he has you beat already. He's so intellectual and has all of those, things that every one of us hockey players wants. I pride myself on the playmaking ability that I have, but for him, he does such a good job, and he balances that line between him taking a lot of the time and space for himself, but he puts a lot more for his teammates too. Like he's a multifaceted player.
Do you ever down the road, and I know we're many, many years away from you being retired from playing the game, but just because you're so engaging in situations like this, and I knew before we did the podcast today how good you'd be in this format, but you have the gift. Is that something down the road? Because I know you mentioned your boyfriend, and I've done a podcast with Parker recently on the Kindness Chronicles, and he, like you, is just such an engaging young man. Do you ever have that in the back of your mind as something down the road you get into?
Broadcasting or coaching? Which one?
Yeah, broadcasting, I think, is what I'm thinking. I mean, coaching's a no-brainer. Yeah,
right. I think for me, we'll start with the coaching realm of things. I love individual skills. That's where I thrive. And I think for me, I have a very cutthroat mentality. And if you're not in that realm of wanting to compete and wanting to do things, my time is wasted if you're not doing what I need you to do. So for me, I love the individual skills aspect. I coach some young girls in the summer. Take some time out of my day to do it. I just feel like it's good for me to think a certain way and to see things from a different perspective. And I think from the broadcasting sense of things, absolutely. I think that could be something that, I could dive into. I know Parker loves it. He works for K-Fan right now and literally could live or die by the Timberwolves. So he loves doing it and he enjoys the heck out of it. So for me, obviously, I want to continue playing for a while here until until things either don't work out or my body can't get out of bed anymore. So we'll see when that happens. But yes, obviously that's something I've thought about and something that some people have pushed at me a little bit just because I feel like I'm well spoken and can, speak through a lot of different aspects of different things. So that's definitely on my radar. But I'm hoping hockey lasts me for a little bit while longer.
Well, you got a lot of time in front of you to play. Yes. I just think it's cool that it's a full circle back to Lake City. You mentioned your parents, your brothers, the basketball tie-in, and now your significant other is Parker Fox, who plays for the Golden Gophers. I really find that to be very serendipitous. I think it's fantastic, and having the chance to visit with you today, you guys are two peas in a pod. I'll just say that he's fantastic too. He really is. All right, final couple of minutes here, and I really appreciate your time. But this is at the end of each show. We do what's called the Hat Trick Hot Seat. It sounds very daunting. The questions are really simple, and we're going to just find out a little bit more about you, maybe away from the rink. So here we go. Taylor Heise on the Hat Trick Hot Seat. Your very favorite vacation spot you've ever been to?
So I actually went to Hawaii, but not for vacation, really. My brother was playing in a basketball tournament. So it was a vacation for me, but I think Hawaii is definitely one of my favorite places I've been. It's like in the movies. Like when you get there, you're like, it's supposed to look like this, and it looks exactly the way that you thought. So
I've never been. It's on my list. I have to get there.
You have to. And I just stayed in Waikiki Beach, which is one of the most, I would say, touristy places, but super fun. And I'm someone who thrives in the sun. I love to be outdoors. So it was quite the experience.
I mentioned I'm a big movie guy, so I have to ask. And you probably don't love movies like I do because I'm obsessed, but if you had to pick one as your all-time favorite movie, maybe just a movie where you're stressed out, like late in the regular season this year where the team's not doing what you want the team to do and you need 2 hours of a mental vacation. What is your favorite movie to pop in and watch?
Yeah, so for me, I'm more of a TV show girl. I like the longer, I watched all of Grey's Anatomy, almost all of it, because there's literally so many seasons of it. I watched all of Suits. I'm watching White Collar right now, but for me, if I'm going to wind down at night, I'll have a bag of popcorn, maybe some fruit, and just watch a rom-com. I just feel like it calms me down, and it just kind of brings that, like you said, kind of serendipitous, fun aspect back to it. And I've just always been someone to watch rom-coms. I'm not more of a scary type of girl. I just feel like I like to be in a normal situation and just kind of see that. So I feel like that's kind of my favorite.
Have you ever seen the movie Notting Hill?
No.
Okay, I knew you're too young, and I get that. But put that on your short list of rom-coms to watch. Julia Roberts, spectacular in this movie. Hugh Grant, so well cast in this movie. So Notting Hill on your short list. Now, if you and Parker have a big date night coming up and he says, any place in the Twin Cities for this special dinner for us two tonight, you get to pick the spot. Taylor, what's the spot?
Gosh, there's just so many. I actually went to the Butcher and the Boar last night, and it was unreal.
Love that place.
I've never been there before. That's down in Minneapolis. I also love a good burger. So anywhere that I can get a good burger, Red Cow's great. I also love Manny's. We went there, I think it was for my birthday. So we went there for my birthday, and it's, such a fun little place to be, but it's like, you can tell it's more on the spendy side. So those three are definitely on the top for me.
Yeah, Manny's to me is a real treat. I don't get there often enough, but there's always so much food. So you get to have the leftovers and bring those home. And burgers, I tell you what, Red Cow is an easy one.
Yes.
The Lion's Tap down way near Shakopee, just outside of Eden Prairie on Flying Cloud Drive. Yep. If you haven't been to Lion's Tap, that place is great. But yeah, those are some of the better burger spots in town, and you can't go wrong. So you just, and again, if you get down southern Minnesota, of course, you got to go to Rochester. You got to go to Newt's.
Oh, I've been there. I have been there. Yep.
So
super
very good.
Yes.
Well, hey, so much congratulations for you for so many different things. But bottom line is, I was so proud just standing in that arena, game 3, with my background, number one, having 3 daughters, but, coaching for 10 years in women's hockey back in 98 through 2007 and seeing where the game was at that time, which was in a good place. But to see where it is now, I got to tell you, what you guys are doing, it is so awesome. And that building that night, I had more fun just sitting back watching a game of hockey, and that Minnesota, the kids were chanting the entire game, was ringing in my ears on the way to my car after, and I just had the biggest smile on my face. Congrats. You've done so many good things for the game. Keep doing it, Taylor, and I really appreciate your time today on Wooden Sticks.
Thank you so much. I had a great time.
That's Taylor Heise, and we'll wrap up the show after this quick break right here on the Sticks. All right, we are back, and it was so much fun to connect with Taylor today. Such an engaging person, right? Just the right person at the right time to be one of the real leaders at the forefront of this big push in the PWHL. As I mentioned in our conversation, I was lucky enough to attend one of those games in the championship series, and I was blown away by, number one, the volume of people in the building on a night where the Timberwolves had a home playoff game and the Twins had a home baseball game, and it was a beautiful weather night to see almost 10,000 people at that rink at the XL Energy Center, and then the energy and the youngsters in that building. So many young boys and girls celebrating the game of hockey. And I just think it's spectacular that we have this here in our market. And I think because it's such a hockey hotbed and we have so much homegrown talent like Taylor Heise, that this thing is really going to pick up momentum in the years to come. And I think it's going to be great for the game of hockey. And if you're somebody out there, whether you're a youngster yourself or you've got young girls involved in the game, family or friends, what a cool thing to have for these gals to be able to go over to St. Paul, watch some of their heroes, see a great brand of hockey, and in that atmosphere that frankly is as good as I've seen. And that includes all Wild games. That building was electric for game 3 of that series with Boston. And I had so much fun just sitting back and listening and watching and enjoying the product that was. It was worthy of championship caliber hockey. And really, I just think the sky's the limit here for this league. And so to connect today with one of their best players and hear from Taylor Heise was just a thrill for me as a fan of the game, and great things ahead. And we get that nickname here later this summer, and we'll see how my Purple Rain does. But looking forward to seeing where Taylor and this team can go from here after setting the bar pretty high here in year number 1. As I mentioned earlier on the show, I'd love to find some guests that you're interested in. So just feel free to ping me at Gorgomatic21 on X, formerly known as Twitter, and let me know if there's anybody out there, player, manager, high school, college, pro, doesn't matter, with some Minnesota ties. We're going to try to get more involved on the high school side of things when we get closer to the fall, but there's always a chance to maybe reconnect this summer with some friends. I'm going to try to get Darby Hendrickson on the show. Certainly a transitional point in his career after so many wonderful years with the Minnesota Wild. It's tough to see him go, but he's on the short list of somebody I want to connect with here this summer, along with Andrew Brunette, another former Wild member who's doing great things as the head coach of the Nashville Predators. I had a conversation with Bruno a few months ago when the Wild were visiting the Predators late in the regular season. Mentioned I was starting this new podcast project, and he expressed some interest in coming on. If we can get him to have a couple of those belly laughs on the show, it'll make it all worthwhile. He's just such an awesome dude. And don't forget Dean Evison. And maybe he'll be one of the markers to get the job in San Jose, which as we sit here now has still not been filled. I keep watching all of these vacancies and wondering how these teams can overlook a guy of Dean's caliber. But I did have a conversation with Dean a little while back, and he is interested as well in coming on the show. So those are just a few of the guests that I've got on my short list in front of me right now. And again, I'd love to hear from you along the way. Thank you again to the folks from the Minnesota Masons. The Masonic charities in town are just so valuable, and it's so great to have them on board. And of course, Bay to Bay Boat Club. As I sit here today in the heart of summer, what a great time if you can make it work to be a member of Bay to Bay Boat Club and their great support here of Wooden Sticks. Many great shows to come. Once again, want to thank Taylor Heise for taking time out of her busy schedule and celebrate a championship today for Minnesota in the PWHL. My name is Kevin Gorg. I look forward to many great conversations in the near future. And again, if you have anybody that you think could be pumped up or locked into here in the hockey world, as you know, it's a small circle in the game of hockey. So we take care of our own. Karen Cleary, kcleary@talknorth.com if you want somebody or your own business to be a part of this great show. Talk to you soon. Thanks again for listening to Wooden Sticks.